Um, a few minutes ago, you were telling me because while public employee union numbers have been on the increase nationally, non-public union employees have been diminishing in size. Yours is seeing some substantial growth, and you've seen a real spurt in growth just since the pandemic struck.
During this pandemic, we've seen just a dramatic rise of employment as people move from restaurants that have been closed to the grocery aisle. And we're seeing significant purchasing trends. People are moving to the baking aisle that they haven't gone to largely for 25, 30, 40 years. And because of that, we're up another 4,000 members, and we're around 29,000 right now. You know, as the industries open up and restaurants open up, we expect some of that to go back, but we don't expect all of it to go back, which is an interesting trend in retail.
You know, a year ago, no one would have ever called a cashier at Fred Meyer an essential worker. And yet clearly they are. And, you know, clearly there has been a raised awareness of the individuals who do the kinds of jobs, many of whom are represented by your union, as being so necessary to supply chain, to our health and well-being. And I would think that the appreciation that's, you know, going out now, sort of similar to the sentiments people had after 2011 to the Fire Bureau and police, has got to be a great rallying cry for your members. And if you combine that with the concerns about the lack of safety precautions that they're getting, it seems to me it would be a rallying cry. On the other hand, we have this huge economic downturn, which typically is not great for negotiating positions for labor organizations. So with that long question, I'm just wondering how you and your members are viewing the world.
We see it as a double-edged sword. We have customers coming up to our members saying, thank you for your service, being a grocery clerk. And being a grocery clerk, coming from the grocery stores myself, that's something you just don't see every day.
Right.
Now, while we get the appreciation, we also have the other side of the sword, if you would, double-edged sword. We're on the front lines of a pandemic, and we work check stands right there with the customer 1-2 feet away for 8 to 10 weeks with no personal protection. In fact, and without mentioning any stores, because I don't think the brands necessarily reflect this today, but as late as middle of March, people were told do not wear masks. That will scare the customers. But the reality is today we have 54 members in our local that have confirmed COVID cases. And today I would say it's been mitigated largely with a lot of personal protection that's in the workplace. We argued that the governor needs to make it mandatory that if you work in retail, you need to be given mandatory wear a mask, because the retailers ironically argued that they didn't want to upset the customer and make them wear a mask mandatorily. So, you know, you juxtapose the safety of our members versus a satisfied customer. And we said, well, then there's no way you could open up without having mandatory retail, having the social distancing and all the CDC guidelines, but specifically we need to have masks. And today you're seeing that if you go into a grocery store.
Jeff, we published a story a week or two ago about a number of, about a letter that had been written to Kate Brown by Nursing Home Trade Association and other healthcare organizations asking for immunity, legal immunity from lawsuits as a consequence of this COVID. So a nursing home would be immune. I'm just wondering, does your organization, or you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I do. I mean, I just went on public record in 2 legislative hearings, one this morning and one yesterday, and I've got more coming up next week. And what we're finding is that a lot of companies want to socialize the risk, but not protect the workers. And it just seems to be a disconnect, saying, hey, we need to be financially bailed out. I mean, it's a market-based economy in the private sector. However, this thing, we need to be bailed out. And I'm not saying I'm not supporting a lot of that. I really do, but I think it has to marry that the employees need to be protected at the same time. So if you indemnify the companies, and then you also say, well, gee whiz, we're going to make it to where people don't have the right to litigate in court. You're taking away the basic functions of our ability to have recourse. And that's the reason we're saying at least people getting COVID-19, employees of those retirement homes and whatnot, minimally need to be covered with, if you're a worker and you're exposed and you're required to work, you should have the presumption of workers' comp acceptance of a claim. And frankly, I'm hearing the employers also saying, yeah, if there's claims, we want these to be not tagged against our account. Well, so they're doing everything to mitigate the liability and socialize the risk. But we're simply saying there has to be in tandem. You have to take care of the workers, whether they're grocery clerks, healthcare workers, home care workers, whoever it is. This pandemic, we should be looking out for Oregonians and at the same time helping our economy lift back up.
Jeff, I read somewhere an essay by an economist about trying to compare what happened to America after the Great Depression and what happened to America after the Great Recession of 2008. And the point that he was trying to make is, after the Great Depression, America changed, and it changed for the better. Income became less inequitable. A number of wonderful social programs were created. And that after 2008, the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. And I mean, it's an objective fact. There's more income inequality now than there was before then. And
Well,
what he was posing is, what's it going to be this time?
The one thing that came out of the Great Depression was the National Labor Relations Act, which led to unionization, which led to a middle class, which led to a shared economy. That has been chiseled away, quite frankly, since Ronald Reagan. And you can see growth, job wage growth is pretty flat for the last 30 years, while the costs went up and productivity went up. So 2008 was kind of a devastating hit on the economy. If I were to look at what's coming out of this, is that there's a whole generation of young people that already knew this inequity had to change. Today, there's now almost a statement of, wow, there is a purpose and function for government, where there's so many anti-government people out there. But I think that you're seeing more people go, wow, government does have a role in the protection of me besides just the military. So I think healthcare is going to become more of a must-have as a human right in this country. So it may be the spurring of a new generation creating a middle class based on equity. Social equity, racial equity. If you would, I think this might have been the linchpin that moves us to the Star Trek. People are respected for who they are. That's quite a nice utopia that I aspire to.